Hi everybody, this is Arkady Frekhtman, a New York City personal injury trial attorney, and welcome to another episode of Last Week Tonight, where we answer your questions and we go over your comments. So let's do it a little bit differently. We haven't had that many new comments or questions because we did a few lives and I feel like people are joining the lives, asking questions in the lives. So let's start with the most recent. This was only 16 hours ago, last night. And let's see how far back we can get. So this one comes from Free Rad, and he says, I can't believe you would suggest a fusion surgery. Don't do that, people. It's painful and barbaric, usually leads to another and another, and I can't believe it's legal, pun intended. And he's referring to a video I did called Personal Injury Lawsuit Step-by-Step Process. And so I was confused what he's talking about, because he's saying like I'm recommending or, somehow suggesting people go get a fusion. And first of all, I'm not a doctor, I'm a lawyer, so I can't be giving medical advice. And I never suggested anybody get any type of procedure. But what I did do in that video is that around at the 5-minute mark in that video, what I talked about was just common procedures that people do. And I think I started with chiropractic care, physical therapy, right? And if that's not helping, people do pain management like epidural steroid injections. And if that doesn't help, they might get a percutaneous discectomy or rhizotomy. They might have ablation, right? Different procedures. Now, these are all decided by the doctor as well as the patient together. Now, the lawyer should be involved in terms of just, reviewing everything, being involved, maybe helping coordinate a patient's care. If a patient doesn't know where to go and they're having symptoms, for example, like a traumatic brain injury symptom, you would send them to the right doctor, like a neurologist. As a lawyer, that's coordinating care. So I think that's what I talked about, just general procedures and the fact that, a lot of people do end up having a spinal surgery of some sort as the last or final medical step, because in the beginning you're getting the physical therapy, the massage, the acupuncture, the range of motion. If the pain doesn't go away, hopefully it does, right? If it goes away, great, you're good. Off you go. You're done with your therapy. You're going to get a settlement. Probably it's going to be small, maybe $20,000, right? But you're done. You're healthy. That's more important than getting a settlement. Now, if you can't, right, because you have this pain, you need the next steps. Then you get the epidural, perhaps the percutaneous discectomy. Now, if that fails and the doctor thinks like the only way this patient can get better is from a discectomy, a full-blown laminectomy, perhaps a fusion surgery, then that's what some people choose to do. So I was describing that as a process because a lot of people do end up needing it. People do get it. So that's what I was talking about. So I don't know. And he mentioned something about his brother had one and he had a bad reaction. But some people have a bad reaction to it. Some people, including many of my clients, do get the fusion surgery and then they're much better from it. They were in a lot of pain. Like, for example, I remember this one young lady, she was in so much pain and she had a cervical fusion, and like a month later, she's back to school, she's carrying a backpack, and she feels a lot better, and her serious herniation was improved. But yeah, it is a very, very serious procedure. Ultimately, they're putting a cage with metal and screws into your vertebrae, into your spine, so obviously that's not going to be something that you want to do right away. Only if you absolutely need it and the doctor absolutely says there's no other way to do it. No other options for you. Okay, let's see what other questions we have. Here's a question. Mr. Frekhtman, is it possible to get economic damages even though I was not working at the time, but now cannot work due to these injuries and going on SSDI? Basically, this enables me from making income because of my damages and disabilities from the accident. My state has a cap for non-economic damages, but no cap for economic. I own a painting company and was a painter for many years. Thank you in advance. I think he's saying thank you. So, you could get lost wages. I think the test, every state has their own rules. Every state will have their own laws. And then you have to look at the case law, the precedents, right, of other courts and what they have decided, because every state will have their own precedents. But in New York, I think you can, as long as you were working. Now, you don't have to be working at the time, meaning like on that day or even in that month. Let's say you get injured in February of like 2019. You don't have to be working in February, but you would have probably had to have been working within, let's say, 6 months or a year of that date of February 2019. Because if you never worked, right, if you hadn't worked for like 5 years before the accident, then all of a sudden you fell, then you're going to say, well, I would have gone back to work. They're going to say it's too speculative. If you would have been working, how come you never worked before? So, but if you worked, let's say in 2018 you worked, and for whatever reason, maybe you got fired in like November, right? And then in February of 2019, you still were looking for a job, but you were working before for 10 years, you had your own company. So, I mean, most likely they would say you would have found a job, and then you would have either gone back to your own company or to another employer and worked again, and you could show your tax returns, you could show W-2s or, 1099s, whatever evidence you have. And then as long as you could show that you would have worked in the future, right, then you should be fine. You should be able to get lost wages, lost salary, and those could be significant damages. That could be really, really big. So absolutely, you should do that if you can. But I would always recommend speaking with your lawyer who's handling your case about that and building it the proper way, usually with an economist. But yeah, definitely get your lawyer all that information. Okay. And then we have another comment here from Karen. She says, chiropractors do help people with head injuries. And she's referring to a video, how to handle traumatic brain and head injury lawsuits and settlements. Yes, I mean, I agree with her. Yeah, chiropractors do help. I don't think I ever said that they don't. I think I was just probably making a comment to the effect of, that you wouldn't go only to a chiropractor if you had a head injury, right? You wouldn't have enough proof. There would be no way to legally prove a case because a chiropractor is not even a doctor, right? They're a DC, doctor of chiropractic care. They're not an MD, they're not a medical doctor. So like, for example, in New York, if I was trying to prove a brain injury case in court and all I had was a chiropractor, there's no way I would win. I would get dismissed, I would get laughed at and then dismissed. So I would need like a neurologist, I would need some kind of neuroradiology, like a diffuse tensor imaging, MRI, PET scan, possibly a neuropsychologist, although sometimes neuropsychology might not be necessary. And sometimes now I'm reading a lot of lawyers are not even using neuropsychologists, they're just using more evidence. Like once they find out what the type of brain injury it is through a neurologist with neuroradiology, what they'll do is they'll just double down and do more like blood marker tests, more scans to really pinpoint that injury and be like, look, I have this evidence, I have that evidence. Because like there's no one piece of evidence that's going to prove a brain injury when you have everything together and you have a lot of evidence being like, look, I have this, I have this, I have this, I have this, and it's overwhelming and then you win. But yeah, a chiropractor could definitely help somebody with a head injury, especially if the patient is feeling better. Because physical therapy, chiropractic is more like about feeling better. I like chiropractors. I go to a chiropractor sometimes, when I have a little neck pain, I go and get an adjustment. Absolutely. I've used chiropractors in court on car crash cases with back injuries, and I've done really, really well with them. So nothing bad about chiropractors. Okay, let's see what other questions we have. Here's a question. What happens if the insurance company claims that they have a certain amount of coverage and the amount won goes past that amount? So yeah, I mean, like basically if they tell you, hey, we have 100,000 in insurance, and then you go to court and you get more. Usually, I mean, you're limited to that 100,000. Now, if the policy was open, meaning that you sent one of those letters that I talk about, like a settlement opportunity letter, and you say, look, you have to pay me 100,000 within 30 days because the injuries are worth way more than 100,000. And if you fail to pay, then we're going to go to court and we're going to get $1 million. And then who's going to pay the difference, right? It's going to be your policyholder, your insured, and you're putting this insured at danger. So please, in good faith, offer me the 100. And then say, no, I'm not going to give you the 100. I'll give you 25. Okay, now I go to court, I get the $1 million. Now who pays the other 900? In some states, that's considered opening the policy. That's bad faith. Now I can get the full $1 million from the insurance company because the policy is open. There's no ceiling anymore. So that's a beautiful thing to do. That's a great thing to do for injury victims. New York doesn't really have that. I mean, we do, but it's very, very hard. It's much harder than other states that have bad faith laws Florida has a bad faith, although now they just passed tort reform, so I think the bad faith law is kind of going away. But a lot of states, California has it. It just depends. You have to do a little bit of a deep dive into your jurisdiction. Another way to get more than the policy would be if there is excess or umbrella coverage, meaning that there's just layers. Like, for example, you have a primary of 250, but then you have another $1 million behind that. So then you keep going after all the layers. That's excess umbrella coverage. And then, that's usually the way to do it. That's usually the way to do it. Yeah. Let's see what other questions we have. Here's a question. Here's a lady. She says that back in December, she went to a restaurant with some girlfriends, sat down, and the chair collapsed. She had major pain in her right arm, immediately went to urgent care, and she had back pain. She had MRIs done. There was a labral tear in her shoulder, a herniated disc. And then she says that the labral tear, and then she had a separate labral tear injuries have healed. And she had shoulder surgery. Okay. And she needs a rhizotomy as well. So yeah, I feel like that's a good case. I mean, with the chair being broken, you'd have to be able to show notice, meaning either somebody complained about the chair, either somebody else fell before and it was the same cause. Like, I don't know what kind of chair it was, why it broke, right? Maybe the screw was loose, and then like that was a condition that they had in the restaurant that a lot of the chairs were breaking. So then you would have to show what that condition was, why they were falling. If they knew about it before, then how come they didn't fix it, right? Then it becomes their fault. Or if somehow they created the condition, like they failed to inspect the chairs, they failed to maintain the chairs, they had a way to, like, say, check all the chairs and fix them easily, but they just failed to do that, right? And then they could argue they created the condition. But usually it's one of those three: either actual notice where you actually complain about a condition, constructive notice where the condition just exists for a period of time, and anybody using reasonable care should be able to find and fix this condition, or caused and created, where the defendant caused and created the condition. So, you have to do a little bit more of a deep dive. But she says she has a lawyer, so I would reach out to that lawyer, maybe have a conversation and see what they tell you. How are they going to prove that the restaurant was at fault? And she says it's, how much is the case worth, and do you think it will settle? Well, I mean, yeah, that's the main issue, right? If you could prove liability, if your lawyer can prove liability, that's why you should have that conversation with your lawyer. If he can prove liability, if they can prove liability, it should settle, right? Because you have serious injuries. You have a shoulder surgery, you have a rhizotomy, you have these herniations. So, I mean, in New York, a case like that with a shoulder surgery and a herniation and a rhizotomy, I think it could be worth, $300,000-$400,000, maybe more. In Florida, I'm not sure, I think she said this was in Florida. I'm not sure, what the values are. I do know a lot of Florida lawyers that are excellent. So if you needed a consultation with like a local attorney, maybe a second opinion, I could get you somebody. I could see my database and see who I've used there before. But yeah, absolutely, I could get you a consult. That's not a problem. But it sounds like you have a strong case. I would focus on the liability in a case like that. Okay, I hope this has been helpful. Let us know what other questions you have. Feel free to drop a comment in the chat. Just make sure that it's detailed enough so I could give you real input, because I hate when people write comments but then there's not enough information. Like, they don't tell me where, they don't tell me what happened. They just say, hey, what's my case worth? But I'd love to help you, but I can't tell you. I'm not like a magician. I have to know a little bit more information. It's like whatever you put in is what you get out, right? So if you give me a little bit more information, then I can give you a little bit more of a meaningful, substantive response, which is what I like to do. Okay, thank you so much. Please like and subscribe to our channel. Let us know what questions you have. We are here for you, and we will be seeing everyone very, very shortly. We'll be doing a lot more videos. I have a lot of interesting ideas. Oh, and if you have any ideas for future videos, like what you want to see, drop that in the comment too, because I'm making a list, and I'm doing a lot of interesting videos about verdicts, interesting cases, verdict searches, also topics such as truck accidents, construction accidents, all different types of cases in New York as well as nationally. So yeah, feel free to reach out, and we will talk to you very soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.